It all begins in the land of Azure, and the mission is 99% complete. A winged girl gets thrown back, landing gracefully as she says the bastard still hasn't shown up. At this rate, they weren't going to win. The leader of the place, named Ember, declares that everyone there today would be annihilated. No one would survive the rage and fury of his flames. The fairy is certain it's over until a shield appears in front of her. The healer Sato, level 96, tells her to quit calling him a babysitter. The girl charges forward again, thinking she just needs to hold out until that person arrives. She is Hyena Hitomi, the third most famous on the ranking, and she's there to throw a solid punch at the boss. However, the monster simply replies that her effort is futile. She unleashes her combo on the shield. Look at that, the damage is stacking just like in the game. But apparently, it didn't do any good because she's thrown far back again. At that moment, she calls out for someone who appears right behind the boss, saying she can count on him. Where did that strike even land? It hit a rather peculiar spot on the boss. Then he disappears, saying he's sure he caused considerable damage. But in just a second, the boss is already in front of them, saying their speed doesn't even compare to his, and he sends an attack straight at them. The two fallen allies call out to their comrade, and that's when something snaps. A sword clashes with the boss's, and he smiles, saying he's finally arrived. The strongest of them all was now among them. The blonde apologizes, saying the remaining forces gave him a bit of trouble, but there's no need to worry. He, Kamahara Shizuya, had arrived. The guy is the #1 ranked player, and right away the boss comes charging in to strike him from behind. But he manages to turn around just in time and block it. An all-out brawl kicks off, blows flying back and forth, and he's tossing out some heals here and there, mixing in gravity skills. The fight rages on, and Kamahara says he's going to wrap this up in about 3 seconds. A golden lion appears in the sky, and it looks like he lands a clean hit on the boss's head with everything exploding around it. Well, not exactly the head. Turns out he blasted a crater right into the boss's chest. And just like that, the Mappo Tofu Guild had defeated the boss in record time. The sky clears, and everyone's in awe that the boss went down in a single strike. The ninja there, Nishi, points out that without his perfectly timed sneak attack from behind, it wouldn't have won. Meanwhile, the healer just watches, thinking that it's not just the items and raw power that Guy has. His judgment and understanding of the game are on a completely different level. It might have looked like an easy victory, but creating an opening like that is only possible for someone who fully understands the system. No wonder he was called the King of Azure. That's when a window pops up for Kamahara. He's just completed 100 out of 100 achievements in the game. Finally, he gotten everything, and as far as he was concerned, the game was over. But suddenly, one last achievement appears: Omniscience and Omnipotence. To unlock it, he would have to be the first player across all servers to achieve everything before anyone else. Right then, another game window appears, announcing to everyone that the servers will shut down in 5 seconds. Once they log back in, there will be new maintenance. 5 seconds isn't much time to process that, but everyone seems hyped to see what this new expansion will be. Kamahara, however, is thinking about how much he'd like to see everyone again. But 5 days pass, and there's still no word from the game. The most famous game in the world, an international craze, vanished without a trace. Kamahara is furious because he was logged out without even finding out the true reward for finishing everything. Online, everyone's upset, wishing their favorite game would return. A train stops at a certain station, and the protagonist is sitting there feeling a bit down while reading the comments, until someone tells him to check out this declaration of war. He clicks it, and a streamer says she's found something important about Azure's servers, something related to the Mappo Tofu Guild. Apparently, in the completed missions ranking, they reached 101%, which clearly points to some kind of cheating. She wants the leader, Kamahara Shizuya, to explain exactly why that happened. The protagonist is at the window, also confused. He guesses it might have to do with those 100 achievements, but he has no idea. Suddenly, people on the train start asking, what is that? When he looks ahead, a massive portal has appeared inside the train. Oh, it's the classic omniscient reader's viewpoint moment. Something begins to take shape up ahead, while strange digital patterns appear on his body. The train starts breaking hard, and everyone is thrown around. In an instant, a slash cuts through and blood sprays. The protagonist is still confused. What the hell is going on? From the wall where the slash hit, a knight steps out. What the? Take it easy, Game Master, what's the deal? Sung Jinwoo only had to face this kind of thing after 10 chapters. And it's not just one. There's a whole squad pouring into the train. Everyone's running, but the creatures are already on them. What chance do the poor passengers have to escape? The swords are bigger than their bodies. Oh no, are they going to kill the cute girl on the train? She gets sliced right in half. And my dear little protagonist thought you were going to pull off something heroic, but no, you're just standing there wide-eyed. You better snap out of it, because while you're wondering what's going on, the creature's already coming in to strike you too. He dodges only because he's seen a technique like that before. The creature's already flipping through the air. It just opened the portal, calm down already. And the worst part is it seems to be using a technique similar to one he himself used. The trick to dodging it is actually to rush in and slip out underneath. The monster's staring him down, and he realizes it's exactly what he was expecting. Kamahara Shizuya is level 1 with no class at all, but he holds the title of Omniscient and Omnipotent. The creature in front of him is a level 35 commander, and the move it used was the lion's slash. Coming out from the worm's territory, he's already wondering which way is the shortest path out of here. He knows he's probably in what's known in the game as the worm dungeon. The problem is the beast's locked onto him, so the moment it bursts out of that thing, he's forced to take off running again. But our boy doesn't stand a chance. How's he supposed to win a one-on-one when it's level 1 against 35? Still, he says that in that moment, for some reason, he forgot he was in the real world. His mind didn't register that a single mistake could cost him his life. Instead, he found himself wanting to seize the opportunity. He hadn't played in a while. Well, a while meaning 5 days, the hopeless addict. The monster's about to land a hit, but he says it's a shame for the beast. It's game over, as the worm bursts out and devours it. Apparently, he knew the exact timing for when that worm would emerge. At least, that's what it seems. He claims he gambled on it, and it paid off. Right away, he pulls out his phone, wondering about his friends. Everyone's talking about alarms going off, obviously, but his battery's down to 8%. And to make matters worse, another squad of level 30 creatures is already heading his way, so he's gotta get moving fast. At least this game is generous enough to have auto-loot. Items are being picked up automatically. The drop was a level 25 sword with ridiculous stats, and he says there's no way something this strong should exist at the start of the game. A message then pops up, asking if he wants to activate Hatred Pursuit. That's a skill used to recover items that have been stolen from you. Oh, turns out he didn't activate it. The monster used it on him for stealing its sword. Even so, he equips the sword, and for a second, he thinks he's leveled up to 8. Maybe his stats were reduced, or maybe it's because of that omnipotent title. Either way, as soon as he wields the sword, he unlocks the commander's skills. He immediately activates the Flag of Courage, which makes him run faster and keep accelerating, though it burns through mana. The problem is, his only offensive move is the Lion's Slash, which can be used 3 times in a row, but it's not enough to deal real damage. Since he can't hurt them, he decides to use it for mobility instead, leaping down the stairs. But those damn creatures are right on his tail. This game's seriously tryhard. Then he fakes a jump and hides. Looking down at the sword, he knows it's the only reason he's still alive. What's strange is that he's seen this item in the game before, but this version is way stronger. The downside is that Hatred Pursuit will soon kick in again, letting the monsters track him down once more. The entire train is now crawling with shadows like something straight out of Sun Jinwoo's world. He realizes this is insane. Not even in the game was it this hard. But then he spots a stone, the kind that represented respawn points in the game. Only now, it looks like monsters are respawning there instead, which is strange, since it should have been players. That's when it clicks. The monsters have human-like abilities, drop items, and respawn. Apparently, instead of being a game where humans hunt monsters, it's flipped around, which is terrible because that means the creatures can keep spawning infinitely. Now he's going to see what life's like for a monster, killing a player only to watch them come back hundreds of times. With that in mind, he decides he can't just stand still and die. After all, he's the one with the greatest chance here. Nobody knows this game better than he does. Even if the enemy is like an immortal player, and even if he only has 1 life, he's going to survive. Already heading down a few flights of stairs, he's searching for the worm dungeon. Right up ahead, he finds the path to a C-rank area, perfect for the start of the game. That's because he knows a way to push deep into that dungeon and finish it, without even having to face the boss. The problem is, if the trick he used in the game doesn't work here, he'll have no choice but to face it head-on, and his chances of winning were practically 0. But worse than facing the boss is dealing with this pack of knights already chasing him again. The game really has flipped. He's forced to run for his life, put some distance between them, and only then start farming the dungeon. The trouble is, during this escape, a swarm of worms has joined the chase. At this rate, they're going to catch him, until finally he spots a way out. Once again, he uses that Lion's Slash to leap and dive into a small opening. Inside, he finds the Tears of Farav. A single drop falls, and he gains plus 0.00 into his stats. At that moment, the Farav trial begins, and the creature's power starts seeping into his body. Just like in the game, 1 drop falls every 5 seconds, and in 100 seconds, you get 1 stat point. If you stay there for 3 whole days, you can gain around 50 points. It's the kind of thing that would make sense in a game, standing still for 3 days while everyone else is leveling up. Though honestly, with monsters this strong, everyone's probably dying instead. Sure enough, people are already getting torn in half. Shizuya starts wondering what these memories are. Another memory hits, this time of the first girl who died on the train. It feels like his mental state is being debuffed by something. Yet another strange difference between the game and reality. Then a strange voice begins calling to Shizuya. His friends are smiling, until suddenly they turn into a heap of twisted corpses, telling him he's late. He wakes up with a start, realizing this is all part of Farav's trial. As the drops fall, you start getting hit with mental attacks. He needs to stay calm to farm as many stats as possible. 2 days have already passed. He just needs to hold out for 1 more. But then a blade slices across his chest. When he turns around, it's one of the soldiers, and he wonders if this is the end. There's no way an ordinary human could defeat a creature that much stronger, with player-like traits that can revive infinitely. Maybe it's time to give up. Humanity wouldn't stand a chance against something like this. But no, he's the strongest player. Even at a low level, he's not going to lose to some early game mobs. He lets out a shout, and of course, it turns out to be a mental attack. That's when Farav recognizes him and he becomes one with the species. He relaxes, noticing his chest is perfectly fine. It was all just an illusion. It seems he's farmed all he could here, and it's time to leave. Since he's now one of their kind, in theory, the worms shouldn't attack him. But right behind him, the boss appears. The creature stares him down, but instead of attacking, it lays an egg on the ground. It's a worm essence, and for some reason he's worried it'll hatch into a loli, because lately every time there's an egg, one of those cursed little girls pops out. But this time it's not just an egg, it's something he can eat to restore health, thank goodness. As soon as he leaves the dungeon, he sees that most of the higher level creatures have moved out, leaving only level 20 knights. He's now level 25 from his time inside, and with the extra stats and the sword, he can handle them. He starts by slicing 3 or 4 of them clean in half with the Lion's Slash. Another one charges in for a shield bash, but he uses that flag sprint skill to dash away. Then an arrow comes flying, but he just keeps burning mana to maintain the skill and sidesteps out of the way. An extinguisher explodes nearby, and he realizes that even at a similar level, he can't stay in this area for too long. These creatures were endless, and they even seemed to have some level of organization. In the middle of his thoughts, one bursts straight through the wall, appearing above him. And this time, it's no illusion, it lands a clean hit on his shoulder. He falls back, realizing he'd let his guard down. That's when he notices the monster holding a portal stone, yet another player-type item being used. With that, several of the creature's allies appear at its side. The problem is, he's injured and has no way to dodge. But once again, he's saved by the giant worm. Since he's now part of the species and being attacked, the creatures react in his defense. He's grateful, saying it was by the slimmest margin that he didn't die this time. At least he still has the egg that can restore his health. Then he notices the portal stone has fallen to the ground. He tells the worms to eat the item and move at high speed. He needs to create a distraction to escape, and the worms surge through the tunnels, tearing through players. From the monsters he kills, he reaches level 17 and picks up more weapons. These ones, however, have no class restrictions, probably because of his power and omnipotence title. He knows the creatures are just like players and will respawn, so he makes a run for it. Outside the city, evacuation signs are everywhere, and everyone's shouting for people to flee from the creatures. There's a poor mother holding a child, while a knight and another beast spin a massive ball on its back. And of course, the upstanding citizens take the chance to loot in the chaos. Meanwhile, in a diner, there's a girl with headphones singing to herself. While others are stealing, she actually goes up to pay honestly. I'm not sure she's all there because she's strolling down the street with her phone held high, complaining about terrible signal. Hey monster, over here. There's a lunatic waving her headphones around. Suddenly, someone grabs her arm, yanks the headphones away, slams her against the wall, and tells her to stay quiet. A monster passes by, and only then does she realize there's complete carnage happening in the city. But a shadow assassin, level 25, notices them and rushes toward the two. The guy in the hood is trying to play the hero, but the creature triple jumps to close the distance. It reaches for his neck, and he tells the girl to be careful. When she turns around, the guy has blocked the attack. It's him, Shizuya himself, landing a slash on the creature's arm. The monster jumps back and fires, forcing him to deflect. These enemies are seriously tryhard. It's not easy fighting them. Even with Shizuya being a top-tier player, the thing still crouches low to evade his cut. Meanwhile, the cursed TikTok queen is busy filming a video. He tells her to stop acting stupid and pulls her along, saying they need to take the chance to escape. He keeps scolding her, telling her she's an idiot who needs to understand the situation they're in. But she says they won't attack her anyway. He's a bit thrown off and she says it's nothing, totally not suspicious. Then she asks about his tattoo and he tells her a lot has happened. When he picked up a weapon from these creatures, he gained the same power they had. Now he's trying to figure out why he received it. Sometime later, in another part of the city, they're climbing a mountain. Still not sure why he saved this e-girl, but let's see. She's impressed he knows the entire route, though the truth is the layout of this city is strangely similar to the game's starting map. Probably means the game was modeled after reality. She asks why he's going to such an abandoned place and he tells her to stop following him. Two weirdos, he dragged her away to save her. She's now following him and they're arguing. She tells him to call her by her name, Kokomane Chijo, and says she's following him because it seems like it'll be fun. But right at that moment, his foot passes through a barrier and he discovers a hidden cave. Inside, she wants to know what's going on. The air in there feels strange, but he tells her to shut up. At the far end of the tunnel, there's a cluster of lights, almost like stars. No, on closer look, its muzzle flashes. But okay, they're not firing at him, they're shooting at the monsters up ahead. All of them with heavy shields and healers in the back. Turns out, it's basically a hunting party. But in this case, the hunters are monsters. And behind all of them is our protagonist, relieved because these enemies are only level 18 and don't seem all that experienced. Since they're distracted, maybe he can take them out. He moves forward and Ichijo tells him to be careful. The hunters, thinking he's one of the monsters, immediately open fire in his direction. But he uses his lion's leap, lands behind them, and slashes the healer. The tank and another in the front instantly turn toward him. The shield bearer tries to strike, but he dodges with a jump. That leaves the healer exposed and they get mowed down. The monsters turn to each other, raising a barrier, only for it to be destroyed right away. But when it drops, the humans can no longer see the creatures. Shizuya steps in, saying the monsters have retreated and there's no need to waste more bullets. Really? Why'd you let them retreat? Wasn't the whole point of coming here to kill them? Out of nowhere, the woman he just saved points a gun at him. Ichijo jumps in, telling her not to shoot, saying she's certain he's human and saved her. The soldiers glance at each other and say they'll talk more inside. Deeper into the cave, there's a whole group of people lying around exhausted. The only one looking cheerful is Ichijo, clearly suspicious. The soldiers explain they were on a mission but got chased by monsters and ended up trapped there. The protagonist says it's insane to try protecting so many people. It's impossible. The woman replies that it's not like she can kill every monster either. They're not letting him leave. That's because this is one of those beginner dungeons you're forced to finish. You can't get out until you clear it. The boss here is a pair of level 15 twins. Nothing too terrifying at first glance. The problem is the man is incredibly tough, and the woman is extremely accurate with her shots. Hearing this, the protagonist gets a headache as he finally starts putting the pieces together. Everything from the game is spilled into reality. And now the tables have turned. The monsters are the players, and in the name of justice, they're here to wipe out humanity. What he doesn't understand is why such a twisted game is even happening in the first place. The soldiers set up soda cans on the ground to detect when monsters are approaching. When a creature steps on them, they know it's coming. The oddball like Shijo says she'll go check while the soldiers start evacuating everyone. She peeks around a rock and sees 5 of them approaching, and the worst part is they're always so well organized. The protagonist says that now the civilians are evacuated, it's time to deal with this. The enemies are level 20 to 25. The archer fires an arrow at the ceiling, which works like a light source. The protagonist charges forward, saying he only needs support while he takes care of the ones at the back. He heads for the shield bearer, but the weird-looking mage at the front conjures 3 fireballs and launches explosion after explosion, forcing him to dodge. He gets right up to the shield and uses that leaping technique again to land behind them. The soldiers keep firing as he cuts through the first target. For an experienced player like him, these creatures with only basic skills are easy prey. The archer fires an arrow that looks like it's going to be an easy shot to dodge, until it curves mid-flight, revealing it was a precision shot. Out of the whole group, the archer seems to be the only one with real experience. But then with a sudden explosion inside the cave, everything turns chaotic. The soldiers keep shooting, asking if he's okay. He says he's fine, but he's starting to notice something troubling. The monsters seem to be getting better as the fight goes on. He strikes the mage again and reaches the obvious conclusion. Just like players, they're evolving because they can learn. To make things worse, the mage he's trying to kill is being instantly healed by the woman in the back. Even when it's a monster, the healer's a woman. The stereotype lives on. Shizuya wants to close the gap, but their formation is solid, with the archer always protecting the healer. The only way through would be if the soldiers gave him an opening. But right in the middle of that thought, the tank slams him with a shield bash, smashing him against the wall. If the number 1 player is struggling this much, the rest of the world's probably already been wiped out. Seeing his own blood, he considers sacrificing some of the soldiers as bait to distract the enemy and win. In the game, people could respawn, so he wouldn't have hesitated. But now, these are real people. Meanwhile, with the evacuees, Ichijo is handing a lollipop to a little girl, telling her to stop crying or she'll get all wrinkly and ugly. Out of nowhere, she asks where the girl's mom and dad are. The child plainly says they became monster food. Back in the fight, endless gunfire keeps pouring out, but our boy still can't reach the backline. He says he's going to try one more time, activates the flag of courage, and starts burning mana to charge forward. But just as an arrow is coming his way, he quietly says he's sorry. At the same time, the little girl asks Ichijo if the soldiers are going to die. Shizuya dodges and the arrow ricochets, flying straight into the chest of a soldier, dead center. The woman beside him is speechless, while Shizuya says that, unfortunately, to finish off these player-type enemies, he'd have to sacrifice someone. He knows that in the game, there's a kind of link system between people, and when that's broken, they tend to lose their focus. The woman is calling out to the man who took the hit, but Shizuya tells them there's no time to mourn. She drops to the ground, grabs a gun, then a bag full of dynamite, and throws it toward the monsters, emptying bullets and setting off explosions like a mad woman. This guy's practically living up to Sung Jin-woo's style, letting people take the fall so he can swoop in for the win. But when the smoke clears, the poor woman drops to her knees, heartbroken over the loss of her husband, or maybe her partner, or close friend. Then suddenly, he gets up coughing. Turns out Shizuya wasn't being reckless. He judged the situation. The flag of courage doesn't just boost speed, it also raises the defense and max HP of nearby allies, and he figured the man could tank it. The guy stands there, bewildered, looking at all the dead monsters without knowing what just happened. The woman elbows him in the chest and something falls to the ground. She picks it up. It's a ring. The poor man had been planning to propose, but seriously, in the middle of the apocalypse, now she's all emotional, and he's blushing as he pulls her into a hug, while Shizuya smiles faintly in the background. The blue-haired oddball thanks everyone for making it out alive. Seeing that, Shizuya thinks maybe this isn't the end of humanity. Maybe there's still a chance to win. That optimism changes 30 minutes later when a massive creature appears with its foot covered in blood. In the next chapter, a long-haired man flat out refuses to take part in any of this. He says he's not leaving this place and only came into the cave because everyone knew it was safer here. The soldiers are desperate for help, but no one is willing to step up. The black-haired woman says they need to get out of there because the creatures aren't going to stop coming. It's only a matter of time before everyone dies. Shizuya steps in and confirms it, saying they'll be back soon, and worse, they'll be stronger than before. The long-haired man replies that they might as well all die right now, since those things will never stop coming. Then just as quickly, he questions why they should trust someone who has powers that look exactly like those of the monsters. Ichijo tells him to shut his mouth, pointing out that he's criticizing the one person who saved his life. If he wants to stay here, then fine, let him die like a stray dog. The soldiers tell everyone to calm down and say that anyone who wants to leave should follow them, while the rest can stay inside and wait for backup. The long-haired man scoffs, saying there's no way anyone will go. Everyone's seen how dangerous it is out there. But then the little blonde girl, all cute and timid, says she's going with the soldiers. Strangely, that seems to inspire the rest of the group, who decide it's better to follow her than stay here, especially since the monsters will return. Obviously, seeing everyone leave, the long-haired guy says he'll have to go too to protect them. Everyone gathers what little they have, and 5 minutes later, they're on the move. On the way, Ichijo asks the protagonist how he knew the monsters would revive when this is the first time anything like this has happened. He answers casually, saying it was just correlation, though in truth, he's thinking about 2 massive problems. First, if these monsters are just like players, they'll keep gaining stats and getting stronger through new equipment. Second, and worse, they'll revive infinitely until he finds a way to stop it. On the other hand, the creatures only need to kill them once, just like a player only needs to clear a dungeon one time. In theory, this is a system designed to make sure they never have a real chance to win. A soldier then remarks that Shizuya is awfully calm. That would be normal if he were a soldier too, but he's not. Even this soldier, who's trained countless times, has trembling hands because he's completely drained both physically and mentally. The protagonist asks, "Why are you pushing yourself so hard?" Well, because if he doesn't, he'll die. What other reason is there? Shizuya tells him he should abandon everyone else. His chances of surviving with just that woman would be much higher than trying to protect all these people. The soldier agrees but says he has no intention of doing that. Suddenly, they come across the national crest, where the old emblem used to be. They're sure something is approaching. The soldier tells Shizuya that if it comes down to just the two of them, he should take the girl and run. Hearing this, Ichijo asks about Kotana, the blonde girl from earlier. The man explains that she's now always with Akina. As tough as Akina is as an officer, she can't resist the little girl. Apparently, Akina had an illness when she was younger that left her unable to have children. And just like that, the story takes a full 360 in emotional tone. But his heartfelt talk is suddenly interrupted by an arrow from nowhere. Shizuya is about to tell everyone to be careful when blood splashes across his face. Everyone turns, and they all freeze. The blonde girl has been struck right in the chest. She collapses to the ground, lifeless. The woman who's close to her screams Kotana and tries to rush forward. Everyone else runs after her, telling her to calm down. They all remember that the enemy archer was skilled enough that there's no way he missed his intended target and accidentally hit a child, so the shot must have been for another purpose. The soldier woman fires a round into the archer's back, shouting that she's going to kill the bastard who murdered the child. Another man tries to pull her away, and Shizuya yells for them to leave. But in that instant, they're crushed. Shizuya wonders how he could have possibly forgotten this. Steed golems, these were once allies of the player's faction in this world. In theory, they acted as guardians at dungeon entrances, stopping enemies from escaping through the gates. But now that they're no longer on the player's side, these things have become their enemies. And then the golem lifts its foot and the people below are reduced to paste. One of the monsters moves in, absorbs what's left, and even receives the title Conqueror of the Hidden Cave. Shizuya can't believe these bastards actually get dungeon rewards for killing them. To these monsters, humans are nothing but nameless creatures. They probably think that all the hatred, emotions, and everything else humans feel is nothing more than some scripted game design. Since that's how it is, Shizuya activates omnipotence and omniscience. The system warns him that he'll now be hunted by 2 players for 7 days. He keeps activating more and more abilities, and now it's 4 players who will be after him. He starts detecting loot scattered around, as well as defensive skills from the Guardian class. The enemy archer looks like he's about to act, but in the next second, Shizuya hurls a fireball. Since he's holding gear from multiple classes, he can apparently use magic as well, and the archer is ripped in half. Shizuya demands to know if this bastard understands the feelings of those who were left behind. He keeps scanning and picks up a flood of memories, along with the items from the 2 people who were crushed earlier. It all seems to be getting absorbed. As the others are leaving the cave, someone asks what that thing was, obviously referring to the giant golem. Then the ring from earlier appears in Shizuya's hand. He says he'll carry on Akina and Takuto's will. Whatever mission they had, he'll take it up himself. Watching the golem's attack, he notes that the monster is level 40 and has 50% damage reduction. Its intelligence is low, but it's violently aggressive, and charging head-on would be suicide. He sidesteps one of its attacks and activates rapid fire, unloading a barrage right into its face. But when the smoke clears, the thing is completely unharmed, and it fires a laser at him. He dodges again, but the golem keeps unleashing attacks everywhere. Since Shizuya killed those enemy players earlier, he can now summon his shield, but it doesn't help much. It gets shattered instantly, and he's sent flying. Ichijo shouts for him to be careful, while he wonders why the evacuation is taking so long. To make matters worse, the golem is winding up for a crushing blow, and he has no time to heal or dodge. Ichijo steps forward, yelling for everyone to get back, and then trips, falling flat. But instead of attacking, the golem suddenly stops and turns away. Shizuya can't figure out why. Normally, these monsters only protect players. Either way, he can't rest. He heals himself, saying he needs to protect the Otakus. He leaps onto the golem's hand and starts climbing its arm. Even the strongest creatures have to have a weakness. Once he reaches its back, he drives his strike into the middle of its spine. The golem swings a massive hand toward him, but he rolls, takes a step, and what is that? Light bursts from all over, and the monster goes berserk. For a moment, it looks like Shizuya blew it up, but no, it's a skill that sweeps across the entire forest from afar. Speaking of afar, there's a knight watching all of this unfold. And do we get to see what happens next? No, we're suddenly in a helicopter with someone reporting that it's been 72 hours since the shadow invasion began. A soldier steps on a creature and says it's already dead. Another covers his face, suggesting it might have been enemy self-destruction. But the girl with the massive hammer says that's impossible. No one would push those monsters this hard except for those 2. The green-haired man starts to say something, but then he glances back, sensing a presence. A towering knight is approaching. The woman seems intrigued, saying it's always exciting to see an elite monster. He looks strong, definitely good entertainment. Her companion apologizes to the creature, saying that once Satsuki gets excited, it's hard to stop her. She's already leaping in with a swing of her axe just as an arrow is fired. The monster reacts instantly, and in the very next moment she's down on the ground, while its blade is pressed against her companion's neck. He's stunned. This monster is nothing like anything they've fought before. But then the creature notices something and turns its gaze toward the city. An explosion is erupting there. Satsuki shouts at it to stop underestimating her and goes for the final strike. Her friend comments that maybe the monster has found a more interesting target. Meanwhile, the protagonist opens his eyes in what looks like a baby's room. There are teddy bears, shelves, and everything's cute and cozy. He gets up, confused, and then notices his hand is entirely metal. He wonders if Omnipotence somehow rebuilt his body using one of the golem's abilities. Checking his status window, he sees he really did acquire the golem's skills. One of them allows him to enter a revenge state when something nearby dies, granting him more power. He decides to get up immediately. After all, the most important thing is figuring out how he ended up here. Suddenly, the smell of food drifts in along with a horribly off-key singing voice. So bad he wants to cover his ears. And the only thing this strange girl seems to know how to cook is eggs. She tells him to wait a second. Breakfast will be ready soon. He can't understand why she's living like it's a peaceful life. All it takes is opening the window to see everything outside being destroyed. From the look of it, she's probably a player from the monster's world. After all, when she fell in front of him earlier, she had that green ally marker over her head. She finishes making toast and he says it's delicious, but he won't eat it. She laughs and tells him to stop lying. She knows it tastes awful, even she didn't like it. Luckily, she's stocked up on enough cup noodles to last a week. He asks how he got here, and she says it's obvious. When he passed out, she had to get a cart, drag him up the stairs, and bring him home. Finally, Shizuya states the obvious. He feels there's something off about her. He can't sense even a grain of anxiety from her body. It's almost as if she's not even slightly concerned about being killed. She admits as much, saying she's already tried. But for some reason, the monsters just don't attack her. Everything around was destroyed, everyone dead and being absorbed, yet she seemed invisible to them. She even threw a rock to get one's attention, but it ignored her completely. He guesses it might be some kind of special power, maybe something like his own hand. He asks if she can see a floating status window, and she says no. Then, out of nowhere, he decides to reveal everything, drawing his weapons and explaining that he believes his powers are connected to a game called Azure Land. He gives her a brief explanation of the game, but she says she doesn't understand a thing. What she does know is that her ability is amazing, since it's very unlikely she'll die. Shizuya ignores that answer, thinking instead about the real problem. Humanity has almost no chance of surviving. He says that he'll need to head to the city of Rinkai, and then to a place called Kaijo. He has some important allies there and needs to ensure their safety. She glances at him and says that in that case, she'll go with him. He says it's a good idea that if she stays alone, her chances of survival will be much higher than if she comes with him. But she collapses onto the table, saying yes, she can do anything, but at the same time, she doesn't know what she actually wants to do. Besides, he doesn't seem like the type to die easily. In the middle of all this tension, they suddenly hear a strange sound coming from the door, as if someone outside is trying to break the lock. Instead of getting ready to fight, the airhead heads to the bedroom like they're about to play hide and seek. Shizuya takes the milk inside, wraps a bandage around his arm, and goes to open the door, only to find 3 people standing there. He asks who they are. The guy in the cap apologizes, saying he didn't know anyone was inside. Shizuya tells him it's fine. He understands they're probably just trying to survive, but it's obvious the guy is hiding a small weapon behind his back. Then the blonde one steps forward, saying they've been running from monsters and finally found someone. They need help, it's raining outside, and there are creatures everywhere. Shizuya, keeping a confident tone, tells them not to hesitate and to make themselves at home. They ask if they can come in, and he says he'll get them some drinks. From the bedroom, Ichijo hears one of them saying they're going to the bathroom. As soon as Shizuya serves the drinks, the blonde comments on his arm. Shizuya explains that he fell while running from the monsters, and that he's in rough shape, especially in a world like this. The guy in the cap remarks that it must be tough living alone, especially with so many supplies. Shizuya says he's a prepared guy. He never thought buying so much instant ramen would pay off like this. Then he asks what their plan is in this crazy world. The man in the cap says they're looking for a safe place full of supplies, exactly like Shizuya's home. Shizuya replies that unfortunately, 4 people in that small room would be way too cramped. The man agrees and then says that 1 fewer person would make it perfect. That's when he realizes he's made a mistake. Shizuya's arm transforms and the piece of steel in front of him is ripped apart like paper. Another one of them tries to pull a gun, but Ichijo delivers a swift kick. One more tries to come at Shizuya from behind, but gets a blade to the neck, leaving them gasping for air. The blonde bastard even has the nerve to ask if Shizuya let them in just to set up an ambush. Shizuya simply says they were unlucky, that he's a monster now. He crushes the man's drill weapon and tells him that, unfortunately, they'll have to pay the price for coming in here. But then, someone orders him to stop. When he looks back, it's obvious. The threat is meaningless. Now there's a knife at Ichijo's neck, and the other attacker warns that if he moves, she dies. Shizuya realizes he was foolish to think she'd be safe just because monsters don't attack her. That made him forget about the most dangerous creature when the world collapses. The monster gnome is a human. As he stands there radiating killing intent, the woman holding Ichijo was trembling. They'd heard noises here and thought they'd find something valuable, never expecting to run into someone with a transformed arm. Shizuya decides to pretend to negotiate for now, suggesting they exchange hostages. The woman refuses, saying they'll be taking the hostage and 3 boxes of supplies. But before she can finish speaking, something pierces straight through her chest. Shizuya immediately pulls Ichijo away, telling her to get clear. At first, it looks like a perfectly calculated attack from him minus 200 IQ, but no, it's actually a level 41 noble, and the woman is literally sliced apart. In Azure Land, whenever a monster, creature, or anything is killed, it drops its items and enters a state of hatred. In this mode, if it gets revenge, it regains everything it lost. So, could this thing be the golem? What is this monster doing here? Regardless, Shizuya is telling Ichijo to get back, even though she's supposedly immortal. As the blonde is reduced to jelly, the knight charges straight at Shizuya. Honestly, I thought he was going to dodge or pull off some quick move, but instead, he just raised his shield and got sent flying out of the building. Even midair, the monster was already following up with another attack. He activates Quick Mana to form a weapon in his hand and fires a few shots, but the monster dodges. Shizuya lands, slides, and as the creature comes in from behind, he rushes into the building ahead, running up the stairs. That one block he managed earlier had done far more damage to him than he expected. On the second floor, he stops briefly to heal at least a little. He's fusing items, skills, and everything he's picked up so far, but he's still nowhere near ready to take on an elite-level monster head-on. The creature starts up the stairs, its body surrounded by a heavy aura. Shizuya fires again, activating his weapon, but the monster ignores the shots completely and keeps climbing at a steady pace. Then a precise shot comes in. When the monster moves to defend against it, Shizuya appears behind and lands a clean hit, but nothing happens. He nearly gets caught in the counterattack, but at least he's good at evading and escaping. He backs off, firing as he retreats. He's exploiting something from the game. Maps are all designed in 2B logic, meaning if he's on a higher floor, the monster never knows for sure whether he's above or below. It just knows he's nearby. The monster keeps climbing until it steps into a puddle of gasoline. Shizuya appears again and hurls a fireball. Credit where it's due, he's trying everything he can. 3 floors go up in flames from the explosion, and he keeps shooting. But even after all that, the monster just keeps walking forward calmly. It's because it's being sustained by a healing ability. Outside, its partner is supporting it. Shizuya keeps climbing and shooting. At least this monster's slow, like a turtle. He realizes that the day he survived the train fight was pure luck, thanks to knowing the enemy's skills. He'd overestimated himself, thinking he could face this thing directly. Then he notices lighting in the sky and seems to get an idea. He runs for a door while outside, Ichijo is holding a tiny knife, clearly thinking she can help somehow. From the noise inside the building, she knows Shizuya is in there. That's where she spots a strange monster nearby with green energy streaming off it. She guesses it might be influencing the fight somehow. But what can she do? She sees a car parked close, jumps in, grips the steering wheel, shifts gears, locks eyes on the target, and floors it. Since the little creature is technically a player, in theory, it's about to get sent to another world. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Shizuya is standing his ground, waiting for the boss, who appears, now with an even bigger buff. He sighs, saying that unfortunately, he's surrounded. The boss charges. Shizuya calls it forward, saying he's ready, but strangely, something else seems to be aiming at the monster, and at him too. Damn, it's another creature lining up a shot with a bow. Then finally, another player appears. It's Setsuki, asking who the hell the archer thinks they're aiming at before slamming her weapon down on its head. The bow goes flying, but the creature's still fine. These monsters can take absurd amounts of damage. Satsuki challenges it to a duel. If it could take the first hit, it would have to take the second. But the monster dodges and leaps off the building, firing grappling hooks to swing to another one, pulling a full-on Batman escape. She curses after it, saying it has no fighting spirit, and complains that she's jealous of the much cooler battle going on at the other building. That fight is definitely one-sided. Shizuya is mostly dodging and trying to land occasional hits. Oh, spoke too soon. He manages to stab it, but of course it's healed instantly. It's all thanks to an overpowered skill known as Saint's Breath. It creates a connection between the caster and the target, and until that link is broken, the monster can't be killed. And with no time to rest, the monster comes at him again. Shizuya knows that as long as the healer is still standing, there's no way to win. But just as the creature is about to deliver a downward strike, he notices that the connection seems to have been broken. Looking down, he sees the priest slumped over. Someone had rammed into him with a car. It was Ichijo, scratching her head after leaving the monster completely thrown off. Even better, she realized the creature had no interest in attacking her. If that's the case, she's going to hit the gas again. But right then, an arrow whizzes past her and slams into the monster's chest. When she looks back, it's that hunter from before, impressed that a civilian decided to fight. Still, he warns her not to get too involved or she'll end up dead. Meanwhile, on the top floor, the protagonist steps back, dodges another attack, but the monster doesn't let up. It leaps in again, forcing him to move forward to avoid the lion strike. This opponent isn't stupid, though. He tries the same maneuver he used earlier, only to take a crushing stomp to the spine, stumbling hard. He almost falls off the roof entirely. Even though he's already realized how fast these things adapt, it still shocks him. Unlike in a game where nothing changes, the longer humanity takes to finish these enemies, the harder they'll be to defeat. Here comes the monster for another attack, but Shizuya says he knows there's a chance to win. Right then, lightning finally strikes the top of the building, hitting the creature dead on and leaving it smoking. The noble is paralyzed and on the verge of death. Its sword drops to the ground as it collapses face first onto the asphalt. Shizuya remarks that it's a shame the creature doesn't understand how stages work. This time it lost because of the world's rules it didn't know about. Did he use some secret technique or a special game ability? No, it was pure science. The metal, at the highest point in the city, had attracted the lightning. He walks up and admits this wasn't some genius plan. He just got lucky the enemy was made of metal, that the building was the tallest around, and that it happened to be raining. But the life of a player is like that. You take the risks and grab the rewards. A sword through the ribs finishes it. The level 41 noble is dead, and unlike the others, its body strangely doesn't vanish. The scene cuts to someone asking if that's not enough already. Cracks begin to form nearby, and she tells whoever's hiding to come out if they're so eager to kill humans. The wall explodes. It's Satsuki, hunting down her target, yelling that he should stop running. But right then, an arrow comes straight for her face and she barely dodges. She yells at him to stop with the traps. The archer is already retreating, setting up his next move. Then she gets a call from the green-haired man. He says the creature he was with is strangely retreating, as if it receives some kind of order. On top of that, he's just been ordered by their leader to regroup everyone. He wanted to kill that creature, but orders are absolute. Ichijo notices these people are using some kind of special power, but it seems very different from what Shizuya uses. And from the way they're talking, it sounds like they have a team or an organization of some sort. Still, what's more important right now is finding out how the protagonist is doing. She heads toward the building entrance, while a strange red bird watches her. The next chapter opens with an update. It's been 102 hours since the Shadow Invasion began. Helicopters approach on a rescue mission, but they've already been told they won't be able to save everyone there. One of the soldiers spots movement on top of a building and moves closer. When they land, there he is, our boy and his exhausted companion. Ishijo steps in full of energy, but the soldier remarks that they're not the man and woman he thought they'd be. The protagonist says he knows the guy is looking for someone named Okamoto Takuto and Kumoto Akina. I skim ahead trying to figure out what that's about, but I guess it's going to be revealed later. He explains that those two had gone to rescue some refugees and fought alongside him. He got that information through a radio message. The pilot nods, saying that since yesterday there hasn't been a single piece of good news. They need to drop the two off somewhere safe soon, since there's a mission nearby they have to handle. Shizuya asks what mission, and the man says it's not classified so he can tell him. As Shizuya probably suspects, the city of Kaijo is on the front lines in the war against the Shadows. Shizuya finds it odd that this guy is calling the monsters Shadows, which is exactly the name they have in his system. Maybe someone else has access to the same kind of information. Immediately, he asks the man to take him to Kaijo as well. The guy warns him it's extremely dangerous, but Shizuya gives him a sharp look and says he can help. The man agrees but wants to know what Shizuya plans to do there. Shizuya explains that he has important friends in the city he needs to rescue, and besides, he can handle himself. The man accepts, deal made. Later, Ichijo asks if those friends are really so important that he's willing to risk his life at the front lines. There must be a girl involved. He admits there is. She lives in Kaijo, and the rest of his friends have probably gone there too. Ichijo says she's jealous. She wishes she had as many friends as he does. Then she says she's feeling sleepy and asks to borrow his shoulder for a nap. The moment he closes his eyes to relax, he suddenly wakes with a jolt. The pilot warns they're approaching their destination, but they're under enemy fire. Shizuya looks out the window and sees missiles pounding the city from all directions, though strangely, no monsters in sight. On the ground, a squad of soldiers and tanks is firing when, out of nowhere, a magic circle appears beneath them and they're impaled from below. Shizuya spots monsters, acting exactly like players, positioned on a rooftop. Missiles are launched, the building explodes, and the target elimination is confirmed. But then a massive dragon straight out of Yu-Jio attacks their helicopter, causing an explosion. A scene cuts to a giant hand over a chessboard, moving a piece to capture another, then shifting a rook. At the same time in the city, a titan-sized giant is charging forward, roaring and smashing everything in its path. Watching it all, Shizuya says there's another reason he came here, something he hasn't told anyone. In Azure, this city was where the first fortress players had to take down was located. The main battle would happen at the Great Tower. The helicopters are being torn apart, but one soldier shouts for them not to underestimate humans. They have heavy weaponry. He's firing, but missing every shot, complaining that the targeting radar isn't working. Shizuya tells him the enemy must have some kind of barrier. They'll have to aim manually. Unfortunately, while human weapons are powerful, they all rely on technology, so any interference renders them useless. He calls out to Ichijo, saying there's no time to explain, and tells her to whistle. I'm not sure if that's the exact translation or if the text was off, but as soon as she says she understands, she's pushed right out of the helicopter. Shizuya looks to the side and sees the dragon lunging in for a bite. He pulls out his knife and charges straight into its mouth. Somehow, he turns back to the terrified pilot and yells at him to get out of there. Then he activates the Flag of Courage skill again, and this time it's doing everything, even letting him fly. The battle in the skies turns into a full-on clash between dragon and missiles, until Shizuya comes in and blasts one right in the back with a lightning strike. He knew it was going to be hard to turn the tide of the battle alone, but he had to make it to the ground. Yeah, that wasn't happening, because the dragon's tail slammed into him midair, and now 4 or 5 more dragons were closing in. Before he knew it, he was getting bitten from all sides. The bastard was on the verge of blacking out. Thankfully, he managed to land a hit and break free. Out of nowhere, Ichijo grabs his arm from atop a dragon. He demands to know what the hell she's doing there. She says, obviously, she came to save him. Just like she claimed earlier, when she whistles, these creatures seem to help her. Honestly, when she said her ability was better than his, he doubted it. But he has to admit it's ridiculously overpowered. He explains, however, that the problem is that this beast doesn't see him as an ally. The protagonist knows she won't die, because in the game, griffins and dragons have a skill called Wisdom Bond. When a player is falling, they always rush in to try to catch them. The problem is, this particular dragon seemed to deliberately hurl itself toward a building, probably to take Shizuya down with it. He draws his sword immediately, ready to deal with it, but Ichijo tells him to wait. She speaks to the dragon, telling it not to be afraid. The person on its back had saved her life, and he wouldn't harm them. Watching this, Shizuya recalls that in the game, monsters were nothing more than sources of XP and loot. No one would think to interact with them, but there were a few irregular players like Ichijo. In fact, if he really thought about it, she was probably even rarer than he was. Finally, the dragon flies over a lake, flips onto its back, and both of them drop into the water. They give it a quick thanks before it flies off into the distance. The two idiots, soaked to the bone, get out of the water and immediately build a campfire right in the middle of the street. Why not in a building? Maybe they have a death wish. Ishijo asks what they're going to do next. Shizuya explains that the shadows have advanced too far. Koto district is already completely occupied. She asks where his friends are, and when he stands up, she instantly realizes they must be in that district and tells him not to go. It's suicide. He replies that it's precisely because it's dangerous that he can't abandon his friends. When she says he never listens, he tells her she's not coming with him this time. Of course, she immediately says she is. Shadows don't attack her, so she's perfect for scouting the area. He insists it's crazy. Her power could fail at any moment. She tells him to stop making excuses. He knows this is the better plan. She tells him to hand over a photo of his friends. Even though Shizuya doesn't want to admit, she's right. He explains that the last time he saw them was about 2 years ago, showing her a picture of the group posing for the camera. In the corner, a girl sits in an elegant chair, clearly from a wealthy family. Ichijo points out, that's Hyena Hitomi, the fairy-winged girl from the very beginning. Ichijo tells him not to worry. She'll find her. She grabs her phone, tells him to move, and lets out a whistle. The dragon swoops down, she climbs on, and takes off. Honestly, her plan is much better than his. Charging in head-on would have been suicide. Next chapter, clear skies, but in the streets, knights are advancing toward the army, which is unloading everything it has. A commander orders everyone to regroup in the parks so they can deploy the bombs. Snipers are lining up shots on enemy mages, but assassins slip in from behind, ready to strike the distracted soldiers. That's when Shizuya arrives, kicking one of them aside. Counter to the counter to the counter. He whips out his pistol, 5, 6 shots, and the problem's solved. Right away, he demands to know where the command post is and what the situation is. The guy passes on the information, and wouldn't you know it, just like in the game, the army's main stronghold is in the exact same spot you're supposed to destroy in the enemy base. Right away, he takes off running, because in theory, that's where the core of humanity's strength should be, and it's where he'll see the people capable of taking on these creatures. For now, of course, he's keeping his cards close to his chest since he doesn't know how they'll react to someone like him. He reaches the subway, which in theory should still be operational since the monsters haven't gotten there yet. But the moment he crosses a laser, a bunch of machine guns pop out, opening fire without hesitation. He raises his shield, manages to block, pulls out his own machine gun, and deals with them. But then, a whole squad of soldiers shows up. Our boy tells them to take it easy. He's just an ordinary human. The soldier explains, though, that this is a special alarm that only triggers for creatures, so what's the deal with his arm? The protagonist is confused. How do they already have a way to identify the shadows? This whole mess only started a few days ago. But with so many guns pointed at him, he simply says it's a long story and assures them he's human. Naturally, the soldiers aren't buying it. Then he hears something strange, and when he looks back, cavalry is charging in. The soldiers take the chance to shoot at him, hitting the knights coming in as a bonus, while he slips away, spotting that sneaky figure running off. Looks like that one is planning to use the subway for some reason. Right at that moment, a train is passing through. He jumps down, lands on top, and rides it along the track. On the army's alarm display, an absurd number of creatures approaching. And the worst part? For some reason, those bastards are waiting for him at the next station, already aiming laser weapons his way. Once again, he has to pull up his shield to tank the shots. Now it's not just the monsters attacking him, the humans are too. Life isn't exactly easy for the guy. He hides behind a pillar, thinking it's going to be tough to get out of this without hurting someone. Then suddenly, someone claps their hands and orders a ceasefire. All the soldiers immediately obey, and the protagonist stays on guard. A man walks down saying he's checked into it, and it was clearly just a malfunction in the alarm system. He's certain this person isn't a shadow, but an ally. When the protagonist sees this man, he wonders, could it be him? Who him is, we don't know yet, but it is. The next chapter opens saying it's been 144 hours since the shadow invasion began. At this moment, we're at the front lines in Reizi's station. The blonde guy from earlier asks if the boy was planning to massacre everyone if he hadn't shown up. He replies that he's only here seeking cooperation. The blonde says he knows, and that he's interested in the boy, since they seriously tried to kill him and couldn't. But you should also understand that in times of war, just showing sincerity isn't enough to convince anyone. Right then, an older man walks in and asks William if something's happened, and if the person next to him is another one of their comrades. William says that calling him another one is an exaggeration. They're not causing any trouble, and besides, he's never even heard of this guy before today. He only arrived a few hours ago, and they're still getting to know each other. The old man asks if the protagonist is a tanker, and William comments on how funny it is to see him getting used to gaming terms. The old man brushes it off, tells him to stop joking around, and says they need to get going because a meeting is about to start. William agrees, asks how many to bring, and the old man answers 2. The scene shifts to a room where William tells our boy to take off his clothes, take a bath, and put on the outfit provided. He can't meet the army dressed the way he is now. The protagonist is about to say something, but William cuts him off, saying he knows he wants to exchange information. He's willing to do that as well. Shizuya knows that the company William works for is one of the 5 biggest in the world. Founded over 200 years ago, they operate in finance, technology, robotics, medicine, and more. On top of that, they were the creators of the virtual reality game Azure Land. While picking up the clothes, he asks how much the SAM group actually knows about what's going on. William answers that it's much less than he probably thinks. These shadows really did appear out of nowhere all over the world, and now everything's in chaos. Shizuya comments on him calling them shadows, and William says it's just what his subordinates call them, he doesn't even know why. By now, Shizuya can already tell these people aren't going to share much information. Still, He wants to know why they attacked him. Was it because he was recognized as a shadow? William says yes, and Shizuya finds that suspicious. It's only been a week since this all started, and yet they already have a system to identify everything like that. William says the boy isn't as well informed as he thinks. The real game began 5 days ago, but the beta tests started over 2 weeks earlier. From specific points on the map, this phenomenon started happening, and every major organization in the world began sharing information. Shizuya finds it strange. How is that possible? And how did no one from the public find out? William explains that they controlled all the information as much as possible. If people found out everything, it would cause an even bigger chaos. That only makes Shizuya more confused. First, it seems the military doesn't trust William. Second, William isn't sharing much information. Third, it looks like he already knew about the shadows and is hiding something. Shizuya says he could have prevented chaos and death by telling people earlier. William agrees and says there's not much to add. They only discovered this recently as well. There were only 2 weeks between the first appearance and the start of the full-scale attack. They thought they had more time. The protagonist then opens the door and asks if they're really going to register him as an alt keeper. That's the group the military is forming of powerful individuals who can stand against the shadows. Of course, if he wasn't interested, no one was forcing him to join. Now it's his turn to give details. But he doesn't share much either, just says he doesn't know much other than the fact that he's linked to Azure Land. He also says this arm he has seems to be the result of coming into contact with a monster's core. In the game, that was called a signal. William says that's a perfect name and immediately grabs his arm, saying the technology looks completely different. He'd like to study it. This guy is definitely peculiar. Luckily, a notification pops up at that moment and William says he has to go. But he warns the protagonist they'll still need to talk more. This man is extremely famous, both in the West and the East. His company basically runs half the world. A genius who gained enormous power at a young age and the creator of Azure Land. And Shizuya knows it's more than obvious that the person behind the development of the game must have far more information than he's letting on. Not even for a second can he afford to lower his guard. Next chapter. It explains that the invasions had started all over the world, but the Shadow's main focus was attacking the Hazy region. All the attacks in other areas were actually just meant to scatter the forces that were supposed to be gathered there, and the plan of these monsters was to strike with full force, obviously, when their enemies were at their weakest. For now, they've set up several snipers in the highest parts of the city and along the river crossing, which managed to stop the invasions. That way, they've been holding most of the front line, and it's only because of that that the first invasion of Hazai failed. Now they're reinforcing their defenses, gathering more troops, and keeping an eye on the Shadow's movements. This Manhwa already has me feeling a mix of love and hate. His idea is really good, but sometimes the execution isn't that perfect. Still, the idea itself is solid. At that point, William raises his hand and says he wants to say something. It's nothing too serious, but he's curious about something. Could anyone there actually bring someone back to life? Everyone's shocked, and he says of course not, but the Shadows can. They've been running an analysis and revealed 2 important things about them. First is the armor that covers their bodies. Normal attacks can't destroy it. And even worse, breaking that armor doesn't mean defeating the Shadow, because behind it there's still an energy circuit, which is actually their true core. According to the guy next to him, it's known as the signal. Using the signal's properties, they can absorb matter and repair the armor. In other words, even if the armor is completely destroyed, if the signal is intact, they can rebuild themselves just fine. What's this? The purple-haired guy jumps in, saying he liked the information, but points out that they're here to discuss strategies against the Shadows, not research. And he's clearly being a bit stupid, because this is important information. The protagonist turns and says what the blonde guy is explaining is that Shadows can't be classified at the same level as humans. No kill strategy that works on humans will work the same way on Shadows. I wonder, are they going to come up with some kind of capture strategy and just keep them contained? Considering these creatures can resurrect, that's like 200 IQ. Although wait, they'd have to imprison them without letting them kill themselves. Okay, I'm getting way too distracted here. Let me focus on the story again. The old man says it's true. Even if they outnumber them 1,000 to 1, if the creatures can resurrect, they'll eventually lose. The blonde guy says they need to take advantage of their speed and the fact they still have plenty of soldiers. The longer this drags on, the worse it'll get. They'll keep losing numbers while the monsters keep gaining the upper hand. Watching all this, the protagonist thinks that if what the blonde is saying makes sense, then it really is what needs to be done. But he also has the feeling there's another motive behind all this. At the very least, looking at the strategy, he realizes the creature's plan is exactly the same as the one they used to invade the tower in the game. An important detail, though, is that in the game, to actually finish the dungeon, of course, you have to kill the boss. And back then, he was the first person to defeat it in record time. If that's the case, then the next move of the Shadows, at that moment, he seems to think of something. Meanwhile, William says that now they need to take the initiative and eliminate the Shadows' respawn points to drive them off the land. But he's wearing that sly little smile. The protagonist then points toward a building and asks what that place is. The purple-haired army girl says it's the headquarters of a company called Ritsen. What about it? Immediately, this catches the protagonist's attention, and he wonders if it's just a coincidence. That Ritsen building is in the same spot that, in the game, was known as the Tower of Melancholy. And considering that, maybe the president of this company is actually the boss of that place. In the game, in theory, it was the Lightning Demon. Right away, the protagonist asks about the state of their defenses there and if there's been any suspicious activity. But strangely, the blonde guy grabs him, shoves him against the wall, and tells him to shut up for a second. Well, that's not suspicious at all, huh? While he's still pressed up against the wall, the old man says he understands that they want to take the initiative. The plan is decided, and that's it for today's meeting. Huh, everyone's already leaving. Damn, our protagonist is about to question. Then in the hallway, the blonde says, "You idiot. Why didn't you say back there that we need to protect that thing?" William sighs and says he should have explained first. First of all, the connection between the game and reality hasn't even been officially acknowledged yet. Even if they told those army folks about it, nobody would take it seriously enough to mobilize all the troops just because of the two of them. Then he says something that doesn't make much sense about how to give 99% of the people who don't know the game a fair chance. They didn't need to share all the information. Shizuya is confused, but says that the only people who can protect Ritsun are the army. William, however, smiles and says maybe it's not just them. At that moment, some helicopters start landing and the squad of hunters who are going to die without doing a damn thing shows up. At least they'll give our protagonist a chance to shine, who asks if they're William's subordinates. This guy is giving that sinister face like Kira smirking in his room while the family can't hear anything, you know. Just looking at his face, you can tell he's got that evil look in his eyes. But he turns and says they're the trump card for protecting Ritsun. The protagonist finds it odd. There aren't many of them, considering the attack that's going to happen there, but the guy tells him not to underestimate them. According to his research, they have powers similar to Shizuya's. No way. The guy's got the cheat, was the top player in the game, and has been farming since day one. Still, he thinks maybe these guys also have the power of the signal. William calls them over, saying he's going to introduce them to the others. Downstairs, he introduces Shizuka and says he's also one of the people who carries the oath, probably the name of the power. Our boy sees the group arriving, and the only thing he can notice is that the girl on the left has her underwear showing. The male mind is powerful. It notices details instantly. William asks about the mission status, and the guy with the bever in his mouth says it went fine, but they ran into a few issues. William tells him to explain, and he says it's nothing serious. It's just that Captain Hashida let his guard down, and they were spotted much earlier than they should have been. Even so, there were no casualties. The red-haired guy, Hashida, tells him to stop ratting him out to the boss. Now that I look closely, the guy's got a big emblem on his back and says it's up to the boss to decide whether that was wrong or not. William just yells for everyone to shut up. He praises their good work and tells them all to go inside and rest. On top of that, he warns Hashida that they got plenty of people who can replace him as vice captain. He waves goodbye and says they'll talk again in an hour, while Hashida tells the emblem guy he's going to pay for that. The poor guy just stands there thinking that leading a team really is tough. Then he walks past our boy and gives him a peculiar stare. Wow, the guy stops and asks what he thinks he's doing there. The protagonist is a bit confused, and the guy takes off his entire mask, asking if he doesn't recognize him. Turns out he's someone named Meiji-san. Oh, from my list of names, Meiji-san is that healer from the very beginning, the first chapter, who smiles at our boy and says he didn't expect to find him in a place like this. He explains how he ended up there, and our guy tells him that it was William who brought him. Meiji seems surprised that William likes the kid and invited him, which our boy thinks doesn't sound like the truth in either case. Still, Meiji says to forget that. What he wants to know is why he's with them. He says it's a long story and tells them to go somewhere else. The scene shifts to a bar with guards out front and hearts on the sign. What the heck? Is this an apocalyptic brothel? Unfortunately, the place is full of men. Inside, Meiji says he almost died in the sea of Yumashiro and was saved at the last second. Apparently, it was William who saved him, and since then, he's been with the guy. Shizuya says it's good to know, but adds that he didn't seem to be living a very good life. Meiji laughs and says there's just too much chaos going on. He takes a sip of his beer and says that back in the day, Hashia was the main captain, but he ended up killing countless allies, nothing suspicious at all. And so, yeah, he got demoted to vice captain. Our boy is just digging for information now, already wanting to know how people have been awakening their abilities. That's when the guy reveals that apparently no one has awakened naturally. What's actually happening is that the Seam Group has been transplanting shadow technology and circuits into people's bodies. But compared to how it was in the game, it's like having a character with almost no mana. That's because the supply is limited, and to recover energy, you have to come here to the Seam base. Shizuya comments that it makes sense for him to be here then. Suddenly, Hashida interrupts, wanting to know what kind of chat they're having with someone who's not even part of the team. Meiji tells him to calm down, explaining that it was William himself who invited the kid. But Hashida suddenly starts losing it, saying he's betraying the boss. And betraying him how? By talking to him behind his back, and now he's going to tell him everything. He gets right in our guy's face, warning him not to even think about stealing his vice captain position. Right then, Meiji smacks his own head and asks if the idiot is going to go against the boss's orders again. Meanwhile, someone walks into the bar, and that lovely woman we noticed earlier is standing at the entrance, just watching. He asks her where everyone is, and she points to the side, where the whole scene is going down. Hashida is calling Meiji nothing but a filthy healer, saying he should be the leader since he's an amazing DPS mage. Suddenly, he pulls free from their grip and casts a fireball upward, saying he's going to show the power of the divine relic. Meiji is already moving to grab the big M1 guy, while our protagonist wonders how a lunatic like this has managed to survive this long. William steps in, telling everyone to cut it out, and Hashida cancels the fireball. William immediately asks if he has any idea what he's doing. Using abilities inside a military base is grounds for exile and expulsion. But the strange Hashida insists that the kid William brought is just wandering around here and spying inside the bar. William simply says he won't repeat himself, the boy is his friend. He tells him to never doubt the kid again, and the fool starts trembling. Still, I don't trust that sneaky blonde for even a second. Hashida apologizes to the boy and Meiji says it's a good thing the protagonist didn't have time to punch the guy. Shizuya, however, asks if Meiji doesn't find it strange. He's never met that guy before, so why was he so hostile? Meiji just says it's normal human behavior, someone who lacks confidence, shaken by losing the authority he once had. But he adds that the next mission is coming up soon, and they can't have that guy messing up the team. William, however, asks them to be patient. The guy is new and hot-headed, but all he needs is a bit more help. He's a valuable ally, so they can't just toss him aside. Our boy reluctantly agrees, and William puts a hand on his shoulder, telling him to get ready too, since they'll need him for the next mission. Meiji celebrates, saying having the protagonist by his side will make him much more at ease. The protagonist then asks what the next mission is, and Meiji explains that they're going to protect a certain Ritsun executive. He also mentions that he knows this company's headquarters is located exactly where the Tower of Melancholy was in the game. In theory, if they succeed, they'll be able to suppress a large part of the shadows. But just like in the game, there's bound to be an ambush. On top of that, this time it looks like even the boss himself will join the attack. The army folks are saying that everyone's getting ready, and the girl with glasses comments that it's strange. William seems to be gathering everyone who has abilities. The old man is sure they're trying to pull off some kind of trick behind the scenes. He asks what the plan is, and she explains that the commander said they're only to use their powers as a preventive measure. They're not supposed to go in attacking, just to drive the monsters away. On top of that, he also asked them to keep an eye on the Sham group's movements. So basically, humanity is split between the army and Blondie's group. And then there's our boy, who isn't really on board with either side. Walking through a destroyed part of the city, they know this is Shadow territory now, so they could be attacked at any moment. They make their way through the subway, trying not to be detected, while William leads the way. That weirdo Hashida is still trying to figure out what the protagonist is doing there. Is he in love or something? Hey, look over to the left. Fall in love with her instead and stop bothering our guy. The thick-thighed ninja says the kid seems to be friends with the captain, so it's best not to mess with him too much. Hashida says that if he weren't friends with the captain, he'd have already beaten the kid up. Then the butler-looking guy next to William asks if he should punch Hashida in the face, to which William replies, not for now. They have more important things to deal with. The protagonist notices Meiji's expression change and asks what happened. Meiji says it's nothing, but yeah, that was suspicious. A little later, they stop, and William says they've already arrived at the Ritsun building. From here on out, the battle against the shadows begins. Everyone is to prepare for combat, but not forget that the goal is escort, not taking out the target. He asked our boy if he can count on him to watch his back, and he says yes. Meiji will be with him and assures everyone that the two of them are enough. The group moves out, and the protagonist knows that with all his gear and attributes, he's the equivalent of a level 40 player. For now, to avoid problems and questions, he's going to hold back on using the signal so he doesn't raise suspicion. But the shadow team is on their way. They seem to sense a presence, and they spot Meiji near the subway entrance. Right away, he tells everyone to get ready. They're coming. It's literally like they're NPCs standing guard over the subway while the enemies are invading. Meiji bolts being chased and hides next to our boy, calling for cover from Hashida and telling everyone to cross the perimeter. The spiky-haired guy is now face-to-face with the knight. He leaps and tells him to die, striking, but the creature blocks. The guy keeps up the pressure, unleashing a combo that forces the monster to only defend. Even Meiji is impressed, saying that this guy with a sword in hand is like a completely different person. Then he drives his blade into the shadow and says it's over. This one's done. Right away, the thick-thighed ninja comes in and lands 2 more sword strikes to the neck. The first target has been eliminated. The protagonist is praising Meiji's coordination skills, when all Meiji really did was hide and say, attack. But humbly, Meiji says he learned everything from watching our boy serve as captain for so long, and that he's still just a beginner. Our boy insists, no, you're amazing, thank you. A little bromance moment while the rest are fighting. Come on, protagonist, give them a hand. At least they know that if an elite creature shows up, their chances won't be great. And of course, one's going to show up. There's a guy swinging a mace already behind the ninja. Don't kill her. So many other people you could attack. Thankfully, she and another teammate dodge. Oh no, spoke too soon. A huge shielded enemy is coming up from behind. But the guy with the dreads charges in and smashes him into the wall. The strong ones have arrived. Alright then, the protagonist still hasn't done anything. When they're about to move forward, someone in the sky starts casting a spell. Meiji instantly realizes it's one of the reinforcements from the noble class. Everyone's trying to run, but the guy has already summoned some kind of dinosaur meteor. Hashida might be annoying as hell, but at least he's brave. He casts a fireball too, intending to make them collide, and throws it. Meiji is sure he's going to get himself killed doing that. Unfortunately, the other guy's fireball was much bigger than his, and he was about to take it straight to the face. It's a tragedy, but our Chad is going to save this idiot. He steps in to tank the hit, delivers a slash, and splits the massive rock. Meiji asks if he's alright, but of course the guy tells him to shut up. Still, he's practically sitting there all cozy while our boy tells them to fall back. He'll handle this. A noble at that level, he can deal with it easily. So he activates that banner again. That's basically the only thing he uses, and fires off his zigzag skill, slicing right through the creature, which falls in 2. Up above, in one of the rooms, someone asks about Hashida's condition. Meiji is using a healing spell and about to say something when suddenly, here comes a wrecking ball. The guy takes it square in the chest, but he's like a Marvel hero, runs off, heals himself, throws his body in front of them, and tanks the hit for both. The problem is, obviously, a massive monster with a chainsaw has shown up. The thing's about as tall as the building. Amid all the debris, everyone's hiding. Oh, this is one of those sea golems, the same type our boy killed before that exploded. But Meiji points out that a sea golem wouldn't attack like this on its own. It's probably a tool or weapon controlled by someone else. The protagonist agrees, saying it's probably a special type of noble called a disturber. That's one of the production classes from the game. They don't have combat skills, but they can create giant golems, and that's how they fight. The problem is, these things are rare, especially one this strong as expected of an elite level shadow. William gets the picture. A stronger shadow unit is attacking this place, and right then, another wrecking ball comes flying at everyone, followed by a chainsaw swipe that forces them all to duck. Shizuya says they'll have to retreat because the terrain here is terrible for them. He activates a defensive stance, raises his shield, and actually tanks the chainsaw hit right in the chest. Meiji warns that he won't be able to hold on for long and tells everyone to use the chance to escape. Seeing everyone leave, our boy knows it's time to go all out. The chainsaw comes in for another hit, but this time he just slides down to the floor below. The monster is spinning those wrecking balls all over the place, but then our boy fires an arrow that nearly clips its ear. The creature doesn't seem to care much, keeps swinging the wrecking balls and dragging the chainsaw across the building. Our boy summons a small shield and uses it like a board. Down below, the rest of the group is just standing around like idiots, saying they should probably run now. But he says there's no way this thing is going to let them leave. The only choice is to take it down here and now. He calls out to Meiji for support, saying he's going to need his help. At least William orders the others to assist as well. And of course, that bastard Hashida is mad, saying the kid shouldn't be giving support orders. He'll show them how it's done. He tells everyone to back off and blasts out an explosion spell. Obviously, though, the protagonist was still there and ends up scorched. Meiji asks what the hell he's doing, and he makes up an excuse, saying the kid moves around so much he can't even aim properly. Then he grabs him by the collar, saying Shizuya is their only hope and he's ruining their chance at victory. While he's back there tossing his sloppy spells around, the guy's up front risking his life. I still don't get how this guy hasn't died yet. Honestly, can we just kill him already? And that poor kid, she's got her whole tragic backstory just to take an arrow to the chest and drop dead. While that bastard's been a pain for 3 chapters straight, the golem charges forward, stomps down, and once again, Shizuya dodges, realizing the destructive power behind it is insane. That's when Meiji tosses a little boot to our boy, a speed buff. Another attack is coming, but this time Shizuya seems to vanish, reappearing on top of the boss's arm. At the same time, he activates a fragment of his magic book, firing 3 fireballs right at its face. The monster, that acts like nothing happened, just spins its arm over the chainsaw to hit itself with a wrecking ball. But Shizuya senses he's now the perfect distance and activates a quick mana strike that finally pierces through the inside of the helmet. The thing stumbles, smashes through a wall, and collapses to the ground. Still, the protagonist knows that isn't its real weak point. He summons a bow, uses a technical shot, actually his barrage, and with that, the creature finally seems to die. As he wonders if he's getting close to being as strong as he was in the game, the idiots around him are shaking, amazed that he took down the monster alone. While his friend praises his good work, our guy is obviously more interested in the loot. He activates omniscience and omnipotence to steal the monster's abilities once again. The others warn him to be careful, saying that coming into contact with the creature's power is dangerous. Right away, he realizes he's probably the only one who can manipulate these elements. The rest of the group arrives, and it seems everyone made it out without too many issues. A while later, Meiji explains how everything happened. It all started the day the shadows invaded. William's group quickly realized there was a connection between these monsters and the game Azure Land. That same day, they launched Project Prometheus to study the shadows. Damn, these guys move fast. With military cooperation, they managed to capture shadows and transplant parts of them into people. Seriously, their shadow GPT must have been working overtime to process everything this quickly. But it was so fast that everyone who got the transplant died within 24 hours. Immediately after, they tried transplanting into more resilient creatures, like whales and turtles, and it seemed to work. Once the circuit worked in a turtle, you could take that working version and put it into a human. The problem was that in this method, the circuits were defective and had far less power. Our protagonist points out the obvious. Even with 2 weeks advance notice to prepare, all this still happened way too quickly. Meiji agrees but says he has no idea. The only thing that happened to him was that he got lucky enough to receive one of the working transplants, but he doesn't know anything beyond that. He asked about our boy's strength, and Shizuya says all he can really do is absorb dropped items. Obviously, he's not going to tell even his friend about omniscience and omnipotence. Meiji says he's clearly lucky, someone truly special. So far, he hasn't met anyone else who can equip circuits the same way you could in the game. That's when our boy reveals that, just like in the game, when he equips an item that used to belong to someone else, he's hunted for 7 days. Hearing that, Meiji asks if that's why he joined SEAM, and Shizuya says yes. Since he's going to be hunted, it's better to have some people around him. In the game, in theory, information about the world was being hidden by the company in that tower. And since they're attacking Ritsu now, they probably have important information for humanity that they want to keep secret. Meiji says in that case, it's better for them to head back. But Shizuya wants to know if he really thinks it's worth risking his life for the SEAM group. Meiji laughs, saying he's being overhyped. In the game, he only got famous because of our boy. In reality, he's just a regular hardworking guy. Nothing special about him. The fact that he managed to get this spot in the SEAM group is already a dream come true for him. When he gets back to the group, Hashida is sitting there and says, finally, the trash woke up. But his friend immediately tells the bastard to shut up, saying he only gets in the way of the mission and brings shame. Everyone's arguing until William tells them to be quiet. He answers a call, seems to agree with something, and then tells them to relax. The operation is going perfectly. They'll complete the sacrifice before they reach the Elder, surprising absolutely no one. This guy definitely has some kind of connection to the shadows. Up on top of a building, our protagonist surveys the city and says he doesn't see anything suspicious. It looks like there are people living around here, but no one wants to turn the lights on and draw attention. William is pleased, saying that at least it seems they're not in any danger. It's time for them to move deeper into Ritson. As they approach, a woman watches from a window. Pretty tall, she says it looks like some rats are coming in. As soon as they step inside, there are two different paths. And of course, like every smart team, they're going to split up. One group to die, the other, the protagonists, to live. By the time they reach the 5th floor, nothing strange has been found. Meiji's team is already on the 20th floor, but it's empty there too. Hashida complains to Meiji, saying they should just head to the top floor already. Clearly, there's nothing in these rooms. Meiji tells him if he wants to do that, he should talk to the captain because he's not taking that responsibility himself. But Ashida, angry, slaps him and says he's using the boss as some kind of threat. Right then, they notice that when the phone hits the floor, it starts sparking. Something is interfering with their communications. On the 26th floor is the protagonist and the rest of his group. He comments that he hears a strange sound coming from behind a door. Everyone else says they don't hear anything, but our guy insists it sounds like Meiji's voice. William says the walls are thin, so it makes sense he can hear. But the protagonist knocks on them and says they feel like concrete. It doesn't make sense. Plus, in a normal building, floors should be 3 meters high, but here they seem to be only about 2.5. And when he passed through the stairwell earlier, those floors were indeed 3 meters. William asks if he's suggesting there's some kind of empty space. He immediately orders someone to contact Sato, but of course, now their communications are cut off. William orders everyone to fall back, saying this is suspicious, but at that moment, the walls start closing in from both sides, trapping them. Sleeping gas starts filling the space, and Shizuya apparently loses consciousness along with the others. That's when a redhead from earlier shows up, ordering them to put everyone to sleep. Flashbang to the face, and she's telling our boy to wake up fast, demanding to know who he is. Groggy opens his eyes and asks if this is their idea of hospitality. The woman stands up, moves close to him, and says that for him to receive hospitality, he'll need to explain what's up with his right hand. You shouldn't underestimate them, because they also had contact with the shadows. Someone opens the door and calls for President Ayakawa. They introduce William as the young master of the Seam Group and a supporter of Ritson. Ayakawa immediately asks what someone as powerful as him is doing in her small company, but her companion cuts her off, saying that whatever the Seam Group wants to do, they have no reason to interfere. Apparently, she just obeys, leaving while saying they'll pay for this. Meanwhile, our protagonist is thinking that apparently William had nothing to do with any of this. He gets up, and the guy who came in earlier tells everyone else to leave. He wants to talk to William alone. As he leaves, Shizuya remembers that the Ritson company has a lot of information about players. He thanks the guy who untied him and asks if he can help him find a certain person. The guy says yes, asks for the name, and Shizuya says, Heian Hitomi. The guard immediately runs off, shouting that he can look for anyone except her. The protagonist tells him to wait, but Ayakawa, standing nearby, wants to know why he's interested in Heian Hitomi. He explains that she's a friend from the game and he's curious about how she's doing. Ayakawa then asks if he's Kamehara Shizuya. She never imagined he would actually come all the way there looking for that person. She hands him a card and tells him to go to the 33rd floor, that she's there. He asks if something happened, and she says to talk to her and he'll find out everything. On the way, he knows this is all too suspicious. It's better to be cautious because it could be a trap. He recalls that Hitomi was the person whose personality was most different in real life compared to the game. He knocks on the door and asks if she's there. The door opens, and there she is, completely intact. The downside is that she's in a wheelchair. In the game, she had the advantage of being able to fly, but here that doesn't exist. A bit embarrassed, she asks him to come in and says she'll get him something to drink. He asked about her father and she says he's in Januza. The protagonist notices, as always, that this is a subject she doesn't like to discuss. She says it's fine, she's already told this story. Apparently, when she was younger, she preferred being more boyish rather than feminine. She wanted to do martial arts, sports, and so on. Her mother didn't like that, tried to put her in dresses and give her dolls. But her father would secretly take her to boxing, until the day she was left paralyzed. Seriously, what kind of boxing is that? Boxing where you just stand there and take a punch to the back of the neck? What is that? Honestly, I think her mother might have been right. In the end, that caused a fight in the family, and they were never able to reconcile. Sometime later, she found Azure Land and started making progress again, and her father was happy to see her enjoying herself once more. So he bought shares in Ritson, since they were involved with the game. And in the game, even without legs, you could still walk. He thought maybe that technology could be brought into reality. Basically, our boy walked into that room and got hit with an emotional trauma. Shizuya seems to realize that the story is unfolding just like it did in the game during the Tower of Melancholy arc. What's surprising to him is that if Ayakawa is the head of the company, then she must be the final boss of this place. The strange part is that this company is already fully equipped with walls, traps, and everything. That would only be possible if they've been preparing for more than a year. That's exactly what everyone reading this mess of a story wants to know. How these people managed to prepare so much. The next chapter starts talking about a dungeon that existed in Azure Land, an epic-level dungeon called the Tower of Melancholy. The Thunder Demon that's there originally was a merchant who went to that place to make money. She infiltrated the nobility using deadly tactics. No man could resist her power, and because of that, her business grew and grew. She would find a husband, make more money, leave him, and move on to the next. But her focus on business made her neglect her family, and obviously being involved with so many men, she also had children. Unfortunately, her daughter contracted a fatal disease, and she had to hire a mage to help her. But the mage was actually a demon, who went and gave him all the support he needed to use his magic. In the end, though, it turned out to be a portal that brought in a flood of demons and the place was destroyed. Knowing all this, Shizuya tries to figure out which merchant group in their own world could fit this kind of backstory. Considering her father's group is one of the ones involved, maybe they're in some kind of danger. Right at that moment, a strange light fills the entire room. It's the alarm going off because a bunch of shadows are smashing the entrance door, and it's just been broken down. Immediately, our boy says the creatures are coming and they'll have to escape. Meanwhile, in another room, William is speaking with that man, telling him he brought the circuit, just as he promised. But the man answers that he's not going to hand over all the Azure data just for a single circuit. That man standing in front of him is actually Hitomi's father. William says that if he transplants this circuit into her body and it works, it'll be the only way for her to regain the use of her legs. The father replies that William should know Ritsun is everything he's been building for the past 20 years, and right now the employees he cares about are being attacked by shadows. When Meiji appears, William insists he has nothing to do with this, but the father answers that the company is worthless without its employees. So what is he going to help then? Instead, he just stands there complaining to William. William gets up, saying this is his last chance to sell Ritsun, and calls it a warning. The father responds that the company would lose all its value, so why is William still so interested? William simply turns and says it's the final warning. If he doesn't sell the company, everyone there will disappear. But just as he reaches for a pen, the ceiling starts to open up, a robotic hand appears and grabs him. William asks what he thinks he's doing, and the man warns that he never makes a deal he doesn't benefit from. He presses a button, drops down through the floor, and wishes William good luck. William starts shouting for help, and just then, someone bursts through the door and smashes the robotic hand. I thought William was going to be the big villain, but turns out he's a 16 IQ lightweight. Everyone in this mess is an idiot. He orders them to find that bastard, the father, no matter what. Meanwhile, on another floor, the army personnel are all lined up in front of the elevator. As soon as the doors open, a shadow lunges for the head of the first soldier. But then an arrow flies in, sending the creature flying away. The protagonist tells everyone to follow him. They're going to get out of here. The soldiers, however, want to know where the rest of the group is. The protagonist calls for William and the others, asking for help evacuating people. But the blonde replies that the negotiation has been canceled, and they don't need to save anyone there anymore. He tells the kid to focus on his own safety and meet the team in the garage. Since it's on the walkie-talkie, everyone hears it, and they start shouting, saying that bastard of boss not only abandoned them, but also his own daughter. Damn. They swear that if the boss has abandoned them, she'll pay the price. These guys really could have come up with a different plan because now the protagonist and William will have to deal with them. Meanwhile, the boss approaches Ayakawa from behind and asks how the circuit is coming along. She reveals that his suspicion was correct. The Seam group didn't actually want to buy them. It was just a bluff to steal all their data. And obviously, their plan was to strengthen the circuits they already have to be able to fight against the shadows. It seems the circuit system and the way the game connected to people worked very similarly to how it did in Azure Land. The plan appears to be bring the in-game character traits into reality and synchronize them with the circuit in the real world. The father thinks that'll be impossible, but she says that apparently the people from that group believe they can do it if they have enough data. And that's exactly why they want this company. He feels relieved if those bastards had pulled it off, they would have taken over the world. Ayakawa responds that now they're in the perfect position. They have the circuit, and they have the player data. Her father is standing there smiling, definitely about to be betrayed by this woman, when she takes the suitcase from his hand and says she's going to take a look at the circuit. He tells her to wait a second, but in that moment, he's restrained. He asks Ayakawa what she thinks she's doing, and she answers that after all the trouble she's gone through, there's no way that incompetent daughter of his is going to be the one to benefit. Meanwhile, on the lower floors, low-level shadows are trying to advance, but the guy is blasting everything with his pistol. He warns that the elevator is dangerous and tells everyone to run for the stairs. Watching this, William tells Hitomi that he's done his part. Now it's her turn. Everyone should be taken to the secret room. She must also be curious about what's in that place that made her father abandon her like this. Meanwhile, in the room that must be the secret one, her father is telling Ayakawa to stop, but she simply replies that she's no longer his subordinate. The system announces that something is being installed, and she smiles, saying she's about to become a player. But then a message pops up saying no information was found. She doesn't understand why, until her father smugly tells her that he had already extracted the data before handing it over. At that moment, Ayakawa realizes the bastard had been suspicious of her from the start. He tells her it looks like he was right to suspect her, since she betrayed him. He goes to draw his weapon, but she draws first and fires a series of shots at him. Of course, the sound attracts the attention of the shadows outside. He tells Ayakawa to stop being insane, warning that at this rate, they'll both end up dead. He pulls his gun too, but right then, the wall behind her explodes. An archer, the one who broke it down, fires a second arrow that rips through her body. She collapses instantly. Her father draws his weapon and fires, but it does nothing to their armor. He yells at the creatures not to come any closer. Not that they'd listen. At least something seems to be aiming at them. He asks what they think they're doing, and one of the archers fires an arrow toward the ceiling, passing just behind the protagonist and his team. In his memory, he turns and sees the hulking monster with its back to them, moving in to kill her father. The poor man is unloading bullets that do nothing, but just then, the protagonist drops down from above, while the man is crying in desperation, thinking this is the end for him. He's lucky that our boy, instead of aiming for the neck, strikes the sword to redirect the attack, saving him. These creatures are elite monsters between level 20 and 30. Meiji buffs our boy, who charges in saying he'll draw the archer's attention while the rest protect the man. Meiji uses some chain abilities to help while our boy finds himself between the two enemies. The knight is immobilized in the chains, and our boy cuts down what looks like the archer. But then Meiji comes under attack. He raises a barrier in time. The protagonist leaps in, activates that lion slash, and spins behind the knight, striking and dropping him instantly. Meiji breathes a sigh of relief, saying that compared to what they faced in the game, this was actually easy in theory. At that moment, someone calls for Januza, Hitomi's father. It's William, who says that apparently Januza had been planning this from the start. Januza seems genuinely happy everyone's okay. He rushes to his daughter, telling her he's gotten the information to make her walk again. Now it all makes sense. In the game, there was that woman with a sick daughter she wanted to cure, and here we have a sick father trying to cure his daughter. For some reason, I'm only now connecting the dots. You might be wondering if they shouldn't recover the circuit, but William says it's fine. They'll have more chances later. Hitomi, however, says it's okay. Someone else should use it. Her father begs her not to say that. He did all of this for her, but she cries, saying that thing won't help her now that her mother is already gone. Hitomi, let's just use this thing already. Get your fairy powers and help the protagonist with the love of God. Because while you're caught up in all this drama, a message comes in that more and more shadows are attacking the building. William, desperate, tells the team to hold the line, that they're on their way. Then he turns, saying they'll talk later. Januza, however, tells them to wait. He knows a shortcut to the garage. Downstairs, cars are being smashed to pieces while the army personnel run for their lives. The only ones holding the line are the group William brought with him. And then, a perfect fireball slams into one of the shadows. The protagonist apologizes for being late while William checks the map and says that exit is no longer usable. He tells Meiji and the others to buy some time. They just reply, got it. But then another soldier runs in to report that exit B has also been sealed off. An instant later, an arrow flies in and impales him. Here comes a gang rushing into the garage, and the worst part is William seems to be alone there. He doesn't know why, but the protagonist knows it's because of that arrow the archer fired upward. It was a signal to draw their allies in. In the end, these guys are after the data they have in Januza. Next chapter, William is asking the army personnel where the backup they need is. The older officer replies that they also need to minimize casualties. You can't expect to be scheming behind their backs and still get full military support. The army isn't his personal strike force. William, clearly shaken, realizes that in the end, they've also been betrayed by the army. The general warns them to be careful. There are countless shadows converging on the area. In less than 2 hours, the place will be overrun. William's older friend asks why they want to abandon everyone in this place, but the general only says he's minimizing casualties. Live soldiers are better than dead ones, so they should start the evacuation immediately. Obviously, William knows that's just a front, especially since it's going to be hard for any of them to get out alive. Still, with no better option, he tells the group to protect him and start clearing a path to exit B. That's the way everyone will have to escape. Everyone agrees, and Hashira launches a barrage of fire to try to open the way, saying he'll handle those enemies himself. Two shadows advance, but their expressions change instantly. Luckily, Meiji still has his overpowered barrier. As always, he grabs Hashira by the collar, telling him to stop being an idiot and breaking formation. The protagonist summons a lightning storm and activates the banner of courage. Everyone gets more health, more defense, and 20% more movement speed. With that, the beautiful little ninja slashes through enemies, and the dreadlocked guy, whose name I still don't know, lands a solid punch. Cuts here, a lion slash there, and it looks like they're making progress. The army is impressed, and Januza praises Hitomi for having such strong friends in the game. He swears that if they make it out alive, he'll do his best to put everything behind them and support her. Hitomi, however, doesn't look too excited. Girl, let's do the transplant first. Start walking, and then you can stage your rebellion. Watching the whole brawl, William and Otto comment that this group's coordination is perfect. It's even a little intimidating. William knows it's going to be hard to keep Shizuya under control because the man next to him says they really have to be careful. They don't understand how that kid's circuit works, and it's possible he's hiding something. In the middle of this conversation, several helicopters approach the buildings. Someone gives the order to exterminate all enemies. It's machine guns, missiles, explosions tearing up the ground while the shadows try to flee. But of course, an arrow as powerful as a cannon pierces straight through a helicopter, sending it crashing down. The rest of the ground troops, however, are still arriving. Who ordered all of this? I think it was that army guy who, in theory, had betrayed them. But maybe he's actually giving them a chance to escape. Oh right, he was the one who ordered the evacuation and to abandon everyone in the city. William tells everyone they have 5 minutes to finish off the shadow and get out of there. The protagonist is in the zone, arrow to the chest of one, a punch to another, and they're already close to reaching exit B. Finally, there's no shadow in front of them. Spoke too soon. Suddenly, a mage in green robes appears, clearly not your average monster. Shizuya finds it extremely odd for a mage to come down to ground level. The creature immediately raises its staff and a storm of fireballs comes raining down. The entire parking area erupts in explosions. He warns everyone to be careful. The monster is trying to set everything ablaze. He cuts through the middle of the barrage and fires a shot at the enemy. But in an instant, the creature seems to vanish. And of course, in a parking lot full of exploding cars and fireballs, hitting everything, gasoline is spilling everywhere. The enemy fires an arrow straight toward it. With no other choice, the protagonist activates Lion's Slash and throws himself into the path of the attack, seemingly cutting it down the middle, or something close to it. The building begins to collapse. Her father is carrying his daughter, everyone is sprinting, smoke is pouring everywhere, and they finally make it outside. The army soldiers tell them to move quickly. Many people died along the way to save them. With that, the vehicles start fleeing the city. Januza looks back and sees the company he spent 20 years building collapsing. The shadows have truly invaded and taken over the city. William tells him not to worry. As long as the Seam Group is standing, they can rebuild everything. The father understands that all they really want is that data. But there's no time for discussion. A fireball slams into the car. It was too easy. Obviously, another barrage is coming. One of the creatures drops from the sky, and this one is definitely elite. The protagonist climbs out of the overturned car, dazed, and spots an ancient shadow approaching. The very thing he feared most has arrived. The soldiers are firing, but it's like the wind is hitting the creature. Completely useless. The protagonist hesitates, trying to see what the monster will do. It draws its sword and sends out a slash that kills 4 or 5 people instantly. He tells the army not to get involved. The group will handle it. And William does absolutely nothing. I thought this guy was going to be the type of strong leader who fights, but apparently he just gives orders. He tells the group that the time to prove themselves has come. Meiji says fine, starts raising his mana shield, but the attack instantly shatters his magic. Meanwhile, Hashira charges in to try one of his solo attacks. The boss could easily slice him in half, a humble favor we wouldn't mind. But unfortunately, it just slams its sword into the ground, canceling the fireballs and sending him flying. The group wants to rush in recklessly, but our boy tells them to wait. Charging in without thinking won't work. They ask what they should do, and he tells them to hold off the boss until everyone has evacuated for now. They agree, and he advances, firing several quick mana shots. The enemy blocks with its sword, and just then, a little ninja attacks from one side. From the other comes the dreadlocked fighter with a punch, and from above, the big sword wielder. But the boss counters with a sweeping sword slash, sending one strike toward each of them. While they're holding the boss back, the army retreats with Hitomi. Her father is smiling far too much, and honestly, I don't know how he's still alive. He has that perfect, about to die look. The ancient shadow seems to have its eyes on them. The father notices the gaze, and right then, the shadow lunges toward them. Everyone panics, and the protagonist appears behind it, activating Lion's Slash, forcing the boss to stop and defend. The monster extends its sword, marking the protagonist as its main target. They're locked in a stare, like an old Western showdown. And what's this? An ancient shadow, level 99? Damn, our boy realizes this is ridiculous. If he goes head-to-head at full power, he won't last even a minute. Maybe the best plan is to distract it and buy time for everyone else. He activates an ability in his hand, lifts a chunk of stone, and throws it at the boss. The monster easily slices it in half, and in the middle of the explosion, our boy is already making a run for it. The boss notices and sends more slashes his way. He's already inside a building, but even so, the attack cuts clean through it. The building starts to collapse while the thick-thighed ninja wants to rush in to help him. Meiji, however, tells her to trust him. Hashida, on the other hand, is convinced that if that guy didn't stand a chance, everyone here is going to die. Meiji tells them to use the chance to retreat. Shizuya is buying them time, but they're not willing. As part of the army, they can't just abandon their comrades. Man, I thought Meiji was trusting our boy, but he's there thinking, what a shame. He figured the kid would play a much more important role in this story. I honestly thought he was being a loyal friend, but nope, he just left our boy there and went to talk to the boss. Meanwhile, of course, Hitomi wants to know where Shizuya is. To her, he answers that Shizuya is facing an ancient shadow and might not come back. Januza says that in a world like this, death is common. But Hitomi says no way, they can't abandon Shizuya like that, and he's not the type to die so easily. At least someone believes in our boy. William apparently agrees, not because he thinks our boy is that good, but because they're surrounded on all sides. It's better to keep as many people alive as possible. Meiji asks where the army is. Are they being abandoned? One of the soldiers tries to play it off, saying more reinforcements are on the way. Januza, however, remarks that it looks like everything will end here. At that point, William says the solution is for Januza to hand over the power he has. In other words, install all the circuit information to maximize everyone's strength. Considering it's their only hope, there's no way he'd refuse. But everyone turns to him, telling Januza to stop thinking only about personal profit. After hesitating for a moment, he shouts that fine, he'll hand over all the data. William thanks him, saying that finally humanity will have a chance. Now they just need a human pillar. Januza asks him to explain, and William says it's obvious. They don't know what the effects of that data will be, and it's extremely risky. In the tests so far, countless people have died when it comes to circuits. That's why they need one person to be the subject. He wants to know who will take the risk. Oh god, Hashida says he'll do it. In a perfect world, he'd go insane and die. In the imperfect world, which is every single time, he'll survive, get stronger, and be even more annoying. Strangely though, everyone seems interested. The dreadlock guy says it's super cool. If someone's going to sacrifice themselves, he wants in too. The thick-thighed ninja, who, by the way, didn't have those black pants before. The artist was nerfed, who did this. She also joins in. Now everyone's competing, even ready to settle it with rock, paper, scissors. But Meiji tells them all to shut up, saying he's the captain, so he'll be the one to do it. Hashida, of course, grabs him by the collar, saying he's the one who should go. But after all this back and forth, the obvious happens. Hitomi volunteers. Her argument is simple. She's in a wheelchair, so if it works, they gain someone who'd help a lot. If it doesn't, they lose someone who, as she puts it, isn't of much use right now anyway. The scene cuts to the boss, surveying the terrain, climbing up, and delivering another sword strike into the ground. Amid the rubble and under the moonlight, he looks down and lets out a shout. Apparently, he's looking for our protagonist, who slipped away into the underground. In all the commotion, Januza is saying there's no way he's going to risk his daughter, but she replies that her body would finally have some use. No one here would make a better human pillar than her. The soldiers are hesitating, not wanting to put that responsibility on her. Then someone says this is wrong. It's the protagonist showing up completely wrecked. William celebrates that he's alive while Meiji is getting all emotional. Why though? You abandoned him. You're the healer who throws up barriers and didn't do a thing. Shizuya says there's only one person who can save everyone here, and at that moment, he points and says it's Junusa himself. He should have already realized that the shadows see him as the main target. The guy says what he's saying makes no sense, but the soldiers agree, saying that ever since they've been near him, the monsters haven't stopped coming. The protagonist tells everyone to shut up. William then questions why it would be Junusa. Shizuya tells them to remember that the world has become identical to the game Azura. In that game, the player's final goal was to kill the tower's boss. That's when it clicks for William. The boss of this company was Junusa, and that's why he's the target. The strange thing is, Junusa isn't part of the government. He's not strong. He's not rich. Basically, he's nothing special. So why him? The protagonist says it's obvious, because this guy is carrying the information that the monsters need the most. And following the game's logic, if he gets the data, he'll become the thunder god of the region. Junusa falls back in disbelief, saying that's impossible. But suddenly, he goes crazy laughing, saying this must be what they call karma. William tells him to calm down. The future of the entire city of Kaju is now on his shoulders. Junusa starts to get up and says fine, he'll take responsibility, since the city ended up like this because of him. He then reveals a story about a man who approached him a year ago offering to buy Azure land. He thought it was suspicious, but the amount of money was absurd, too much to refuse. The protagonist asks if he sold information about the game. Junusa says yes, because it was way too much money to turn down. At least he wasn't completely stupid. He kept the most important information only with himself. Meiji asks what this person looked like. Junusa explains that the guy was disguised, so he never saw his face. And honestly, I have a feeling it was William himself in disguise. I don't know, I just have that sense. Manhwa comments that maybe all of this happened because of the data, though I don't think that makes much sense. But Junusa says to leave it to him. He'll become the top human pillar. He then tells Hitomi that he's not coming back and hopes she'll be okay, then leaves. He apologizes, saying that all he ever wanted was for her to live a normal life. Finally, a girl cries for her father. William then says it's time to begin. Everyone gathers in front of a stone. Junusa has the device on his arm, and the circuit transplant begins. The data is installed, and right after that, it's finished. Everyone stays silent, and suddenly his eyes turn blue as lightning strikes from the sky. The protagonist calls out to him, but he's already gone wild, creating a gigantic ball of energy, and by now, everyone's already 5 blocks away. Then we cut back to see what happened. They let him explode and came back to take a look. Seeing that massive ball of energy, Hitomi calls out to her father. The protagonist is excited. It was a total success, and the man had become the thunder god. William praises him, saying the man had carved his name into history. But from far away, someone is watching. Another one of those relentless shadows is on the move, and not just following, it's already charging in, destroying everything in its path. At the same time, William calls out for Junusa, who's coming out, and damn, he really turned into the final boss. But he's looking more like an enemy right now. William's buddies start trash-talking, saying he might look strong. But with how dumb he is and without any combat experience, he's going to be useless. But then the guy himself tells everyone to shut up and tells Hitomi to count on him. She calls out for her dad, but he's gone, just like that. William tells everyone to get ready and be careful of the surprise attack and asks the protagonist not to let Hitomi run off. Right then, the shadow approaches and gets smashed with a hammer strike. It defends, electricity flying everywhere, and Junusa is up in the sky like Thor. The two of them face off, and the clueless one asks if they even have a chance. Shizuya says of course, they've got the boss on their side. Yeah, maybe you should help the boss instead of letting him take a beating from this monster, only for you to later step in like your son Jinwoo. The big lightning strike goes out, but the monster just counters it and sends it back. Junusa dodges, but the monster is absorbing his energy just as expected from a shadow like this. It charges forward and slams into his chest. Honestly, it feels like the protagonist is just trying to farm that aura. William comments on how weird this is. Why is the boss taking a beating? Shizuya explains it's because he can't control the power. Then why did you think he rushed in, you idiot? Now they're face to face and the monster's ready to finish him. Sword raised, Hitomi screams no, remembering her father bringing her cake, calling her mom, though her mom had already left. Out of nowhere, he cries under the raised sword, apologizes to his daughter, and a huge bolt of lightning bursts from his body. The shadow staggers back and Junusa stands tall again. Wow, so he was just being dramatic. Another hammer strike. This time the shadow raises his shield, but it shatters instantly. The monster is sent flying and Junusa leaps over to finish it, causing another massive explosion and a cloud of smoke to rise into the air. The protagonist is left wondering what kind of intense brawl is even happening here. The next chapter starts with a soldier saying the crisis in Kaiju is over. They won? Did the guy die? But as always, the enemy has changed. William's about to celebrate, but the soldier says they'll only be allowed to leave if they hand over everything they gained, including the people he's empowered and the technology he's acquired. If they don't hand it over, they're not leaving the city. William says they don't need to go down that path. They could still be partners. Plus, if the guy wants him to bring Junusa along, that's going to be tricky. The soldier just hangs up on him. A friend asks what they're going to do, and they all agree there's no way they're handing over Junusa. And then a swarm of helicopters arrives. Every time I see a scene like this, I think, there's no way humans could be this dumb. But then I remember reality and go, yeah, they could. Hitomi's standing there shaken when 3 massive arrows slam into her father's back. Shizuya knows immediately they're tranquilizer darts. The soldiers approach, saying to close in and capture him. She screams, asking what they're trying to do to her father, who just saved Kaiju City, but they only reply that they're following orders. The protagonist warns them it'd be best if they backed off because Junuza is not someone they can handle. But like every generic copy-paste character, they're eager to die and charge right in. Of course, Junuza activates his lightning, gives them a look, and the protagonist tells him to stay back, but it's too late. Lightning rains down the helicopters. The poor soldiers fire their rifles, but it's useless. They even bring out the cannon, launch a bazooka round right at him, and it explodes against his chest. Yet of course he's completely unharmed. And there he is, Chad Junuza, staring down the entire army, and clearly they're nothing but a bunch of idiots. Because they're just wasting the few truths humanity still has left. The daughter wants to know why this is happening. Her father protected the city, but William explains that to the military, any entity they can't control is far too dangerous to leave alive. Then William's friend says they got a problem. The circuit monitor is showing several red signals, meaning Junuza is starting to lose control. That was already a possibility, and now that the military is attacking him and forcing him to use even more power, it's only making things worse. William says there are only two possible outcomes. Either his energy will grow to the point of exploding, or he'll lose his mind completely. He then warns the general that if he doesn't want total annihilation, he'd better order a retreat. But the bastards just respond that they're not going to lose to this little monster they created. William's friend is over there saying, "Hey, General, 16 IQ, you idiot. We've already lost a ton of people." But the jerk slams the table and tells him to shut up. If we can't take down that monster, everyone's going to think the Seam Group was the one that killed the Shadows, and then the military will lose all its morale. In other words, they're just trying to hide the truth by firing 500 bazookas at Junuza, who's standing there with electricity crackling around his body, while Hitomi asks the protagonist what's happening. He realizes Junuza is going through another transformation. Then a laser blasts him right in the head, landing a clean hit on the like in this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.